Imagine a world where every conversation feels like a battleground, where winning an argument is treated as a sign of intelligence, dominance, and superiority, where the volume of your voice matters more than the depth of your thoughts. But have you ever stopped to ask, does arguing really make you strong? Or is it just a desperate attempt to cover up something deeper? Could it actually be a sign of insecurity, a mask for self-doubt? Today we're diving into the provocative philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most radical thinkers in history, to uncover a truth that might change the way you see every argument you've ever had. Nietzsche believed that the need to argue, to force your point onto others, is not a display of strength, but often a symptom of weakness. And by the end of this journey, you may begin to question not just how you handle conflict, but how you approach human interaction as a whole. Nietzsche's perspective challenges a fundamental belief that society holds, that being right is the ultimate goal. But he saw things differently. He believed that true strength is found not in debating endlessly, but in the ability to stand firm in your convictions, without the need for external validation. For Nietzsche, those who constantly argue are often compensating for something. They lack inner clarity. Instead of being grounded in their own beliefs, they seek affirmation through the submission of others. To explore this idea, we must first understand Nietzsche's broader views on power, human nature, and the forces that drive us to argue in the first place. So let's ask the question, why do we argue? Is it to prove a point? To establish dominance? Or is it really about something more primal? Nietzsche would argue that at the core of most conflicts is a fragile ego, a desperate need to be validated. He believed that the urge to argue doesn't come from certainty but from doubt. People who are truly strong in their beliefs do not need others to agree with them. They are content in their own understanding. This idea is best illustrated in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where Nietzsche introduces the concept of the Übermensch, or the Overman. This is an individual who transcends societal norms, who rises above the need for approval, and who does not waste time in petty debates. The Overman does not argue because his focus is on self-overcoming, not proving himself to others. Nietzsche saw those who constantly engage in arguments as being trapped in a psychological state he called ressentiment, a state of reactive energy, where one's sense of identity is built not through personal growth, but through opposition to others. In other words, if you define yourself based on what you fight against, rather than what you stand for, you are operating from a place of weakness. Think about the last argument you had. Was it really about the subject of the debate? Or was there something deeper, an urge to prove your intelligence, to feel superior, to assert your worth? Nietzsche would challenge us to recognize that impulse and resist it. Instead of reacting, he suggests reflecting. Instead of arguing, he encourages rising above. But does this mean Nietzsche advocated for passivity? Not at all. He valued action over words. He believed that strength is demonstrated through how you live, not through how well you argue. In his view, the truly powerful do not need to convince others of their beliefs. They embody them. They understand that arguing rarely changes minds. It only entrenches positions. As Nietzsche famously wrote, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will often be lonely and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. This idea is more relevant now than ever. In an age where social media has amplified every disagreement, where people argue endlessly in comment sections, Nietzsche's philosophy forces us to ask, what are we actually trying to achieve? Are we arguing because we genuinely seek understanding? Or are we just reacting, trapped in a cycle of defending our ego? Instead of engaging in every conflict, Nietzsche challenges us to step back, to focus not on proving others wrong, but on building inner strength, the kind of strength that does not need validation, that does not crumble in the face of disagreement. But what does inner strength actually look like? For Nietzsche, it begins with self-knowledge. He believed that most people are unaware of their true motives, fears, and desires. And without this awareness, we become slaves to external forces, easily provoked, easily manipulated, easily drawn into arguments that do nothing but drain our energy. Inner strength, on the other hand, comes from a deep understanding of oneself. It is the ability to remain grounded and unshaken, no matter what chaos surrounds you. Nietzsche's critique of arguing also ties into his radical view on truth. He did not believe in absolute truth. He saw truth as a human-made construct, a tool we use to make sense of the world, but not something fixed or universal. So if truth is subjective, Nietzsche asks, what's the point of arguing over it? He believed that the pursuit of your own truth, your personal values, your individual purpose, was far more important than debating universal truths. He encouraged people to explore their own values rather than seeking validation from society or forcing their beliefs onto others. This idea is both liberating and terrifying. It forces us to let go of the need to be right, to embrace uncertainty, to stop living reactively and start living authentically. Nietzsche's philosophy pushes us to ask, who am I beyond my arguments? What do I stand for? Am I truly living my values, or am I just reacting to the opinions of others? As we close this section, consider this. The next time you feel the urge to argue, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, is this an opportunity for genuine understanding, or is it just my ego demanding validation? Nietzsche's wisdom invites us to see arguments not as battles to be won, but as mirrors reflecting our inner state. And the question is, what will you see when you look into that mirror? Let's take this a step further. Now that we understand Nietzsche's critique of arguing, let's explore his deeper insights into power, human behavior, and how we can apply his philosophy to navigate the world with true strength. Because the real challenge isn't just avoiding pointless debates, it's becoming the kind of person who no longer needs them. To fully understand Nietzsche's perspective on arguing, we need to go deeper into his philosophy of power, not the kind of power that comes from control over others, but the kind that comes from mastering oneself. At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is his concept of the will to power, the fundamental driving force behind all human actions. He argued that people are not simply motivated by survival, as many thinkers before him believed, but by a deeper urge to grow, to overcome, to assert themselves in the world. However, Nietzsche made a critical distinction. True power does not come from controlling others, but from controlling oneself. This is where his critique of arguing becomes even more profound. Most arguments, Nietzsche believed, are not about truth, but about dominance, a desperate attempt to force someone else to conform to your perspective. He saw this as a sign of weakness because it reveals a lack of inner confidence, a lack of self-sufficiency. People argue not because they are strong, but because they feel threatened, insecure, incomplete. To illustrate this, Nietzsche often criticized what he called herd mentality. The herd represents individuals who conform to societal norms, who seek validation through collective agreement. These people argue not to discover truth, but to reinforce their place within the group. They argue to prove their loyalty to shared beliefs, to silence those who challenge their comfort zones, to feel like they belong. For Nietzsche, this is the ultimate weakness. The truly strong individual, the Übermensch or Overman, does not need the approval of the herd. They live by their own values. They shape their own reality. They are not shaken by criticism, nor do they waste time forcing others to agree with them. Now let's bring this idea into the modern world. Consider the endless debates that unfold on social media. How often do those arguments actually change minds? More often than not, people argue not to understand, but to be seen as right. The goal isn't growth, it's validation. Nietzsche's perspective challenges us to see these interactions for what they really are: distractions from the real work of self-improvement and self-mastery. So how do we break free from this cycle? Nietzsche's answer is simple but difficult. Stop seeking external validation and focus on becoming stronger within. Instead of using your energy to convince others, use it to refine your own beliefs, to become more resilient, to rise above the need for approval. This requires two things: courage, the courage to face your own fears, to confront your own flaws, to embrace the discomfort of growth, and humility, the willingness to accept that you don't have all the answers, that your perspective is just one of many, that the world is far more complex than any single argument can capture. But let's be clear, Nietzsche was not advocating for isolation or disengagement. He believed that intellectual exchange and relationships are crucial for growth. But those interactions should be rooted in curiosity, not in a need to dominate. When we approach conversations with an open mind instead of defensiveness, we create space for real understanding. At this point, you might be wondering, if arguing is often a sign of weakness, what does true strength look like in a disagreement? For Nietzsche, it's not about winning the argument. It's about transcending it. Strong individuals listen without feeling the need to prove themselves. They engage with ideas, not egos. They remain grounded in their values even when challenged. They don't shy away from difficult conversations, but neither do they waste energy on pointless disputes. Here's a practical example. Imagine someone challenges your beliefs. Maybe they criticize your values, your work, your choices. Your instinct might be to defend yourself, to fire back, to prove them wrong. But what if instead you paused? What if you used that moment to reflect, to ask yourself whether the criticism holds any truth, to examine your own assumptions, or to simply let it go without reacting? That is not passivity. That is strength. It shows that you are not easily shaken, that your sense of worth does not depend on proving yourself to others. Nietzsche's insights also transform how we approach conflict resolution. Instead of viewing disagreements as battles to be won, we can see them as opportunities for growth. Instead of letting our ego dictate our reactions, we can ask ourselves, what is this moment teaching me about myself? This shift in perspective can transform not just our personal relationships, but the way we engage with the world. By prioritizing understanding over ego, we move away from meaningless arguments and toward deeper connections and stronger self-awareness. Now let's take this one step further. Nietzsche's philosophy isn't just about avoiding arguments. It's about transcending them entirely, by embracing a higher way of living. At its core, Nietzsche believed that life is about self-overcoming. Strength is not about overpowering others. It is about mastering yourself. It is about shedding the layers of fear, doubt, and insecurity that keep you trapped in pointless conflicts. It is about becoming the kind of person who does not need to prove themselves, because their life speaks for itself. As we near the end of this journey, consider the power of silence in the face of conflict. Nietzsche believed that silence can be the ultimate form of strength, not the silence of submission, but the silence of self-assuredness, the silence of someone who knows their worth and does not need to prove it. So the next time you feel the urge to argue, pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve? Is this an opportunity for growth? Or am I just reacting to my ego's demands? Nietzsche's philosophy challenges us to choose the path of strength, wisdom, and self-overcoming, even when it is the harder path. And as we prepare to close this journey, let's reflect on the ultimate lesson Nietzsche offers. Arguing, as he saw it, is not just a waste of time. It is a distraction from the greater challenge of becoming who you are meant to be. True strength lies not in proving yourself through words, but in proving yourself through how you live. So the real question is, what kind of life are you living? Are you caught in the endless cycle of proving, debating, defending? Or are you focusing on the only thing that truly matters, becoming stronger, wiser, and more self-reliant every single day? Because in the end, the greatest argument you will ever make is not with words. It is with the life you choose to live.